Yo guys, what's up? It's your boy, the Kiki Gangster here, coming guys today with another video. Getting a little bit philosophical in today's video. I know some of you guys like that, but I recently saw, a Shaquille O'Neal edit of all of his different like charities and stuff, how he always goes into different stores and just blesses people with money, and everybody really knows that about Shaquille O'Neal. He's one of like the most probably the most famous person in America for being charitable to others. And growing up, you've probably heard older people say, oh, I wish I could win the money so I could just go around helping other people. I could just bless other people. And maybe that's something you've even said yourself, that you wish you could be rich so you could experience being charitable, or helping others, or seeing others in public, seeing the struggling, And so many Americans, the problem with Shaquille O'Neal's, charity videos and people enjoying that is so many people in the United States distance themselves from the virtue of charity, as that virtue is something to be seen in the future. It's a success point that will happen at some point in the future. And I just really wanted to basically beg you guys today to understand that you will never ever reach a point of dream charity. The point you are trying to reach is already within you, because every single person on the face of the planet has the capacity to have the charity of a saint, to have the the sanctified virtue of charity. Every single person has that capacity, because Jesus made every single person with that capacity already inside of them. So if you're looking for a future point, then you're never going to reach it, because you're already at that point. And let me give you a couple examples that are just involve water cups, which is free. In the United States, it's very common for people to give you a water cups. But when I was about maybe, I want to say 13 years old, my aunt and uncle took me on a road trip to Texas to visit my cousin, their child, So we went to Houston and Galveston, Texas. It was a wonderful vacation, but on the drive there, we were driving through Arkansas, and we stopped at a Taco Bell in Arkansas just to use the restroom. And my uncle was asking me if I wanted anything, and I said no. But then I was standing outside in the lobby waiting for my uncle, and the Taco Bell cashier, he saw a child standing in his lobby, and he said, "Hey, can I give you a cup for soda? Whatever you want to get." And I was like, "Well, I don't have any money." So, and then the cashier, who was a black man, he had dreads, and he looked at me and he said, "Just take it." And he put a medium soda cup on the counter, and I said, "Oh wow, thank you." And so I got soda, and then my uncle was sort of disappointed that I took the soda without paying for it, but the cashier had offered it. And so, and another point that I really want to get to that. I guess there's 2 points. The first point that I really wanted to make was, that was over a decade ago for me, and I still remember that man's face. I still remember that Taco Bell. I still remember that act of charity, just because I felt seen in that moment, I guess you could say. Somebody actually saw me in that moment, and he did everything in his power just to be kind to me on that day. So that charity was already living in his heart. The second point I wanted to make was, when somebody is charitable unto you, you should not decline their charity. Even if, say, you want to pay for something, even if you feel like it's a virtuous thing to do, to say pay for something, or to do something yourself, like to open, like if somebody's opening the door for you and you think you should just grab the door yourself, I think charity really only works if other people are accepting of charity. And so if other people want to bless you, you should allow yourself to be blessed in those situations, because that helps them on their journey of sanctifying charity. I remember that and I accepted it, right? The second time, so another story I want to talk to you guys today about was the time I went to Terre Haute on a religious pilgrimage to go see Saint Theodore Guerin, and go to, you know, her place of pilgrimage, which is also like a university, but there were several different things there that I thought were very, very interesting, and I really wanted to go. Like, I felt very compelled to go on this religious pilgrimage during a very uncertain time of my life. You know, I was about to go to Poland in a couple of weeks, so I went down to Terre Haute on a religious pilgrimage to visit Saint Guerin. I still very much love Saint Guerin. However, while I was there, I accidentally trespassed, because, you know, if you sort of like walk into this chapel and then you take a right into like the wrong hallway to try to exit, you're going to be basically stuck in this hallway, and if you just keep on going down that hallway, you're trespassing. And so I trespassed into like this area for nuns, into the basically a nun cafeteria where a whole bunch of older ladies were eating. I think they were nuns anyways. They said that they were nuns, but like none of them were covered, so I mean, I'm not exactly sure like who. I think they were all nuns, either all nuns or maybe some people visiting. However, in that moment, I felt very maybe like lost and confused, and you know, I just saw food, so you know, I was trying to get, you know, something to eat and something to drink, and I thought just everything was free because there was no place to pay for it. And I guess that's an odd misconception that I made during that time. Now that looking back on it, I definitely see myself as being sort of an oddball for doing that. But you know, I was trying to get a drink to sit down by myself, basically, and people stopped me, and people made me feel extremely out of place. And in the midst of being escorted out, a woman from the kitchen with a rose tattoo, who was significantly younger than the other ladies. This woman was probably in her 20s at the time. Not like a couple years older than me, probably like 28 or something at this time. So a woman with a rose tattoo on her right arm, which I thought that it was weird that a woman who I perceived to be a nun, or maybe studying to become a nun, was like covered in tattoos. But I just remembered that one tattoo on her right forearm between her elbow and her hand. She came out of the kitchen and it was like, well, could I offer you a to-go cup, a cup of water to go? It's like, yeah, that'd be great, because, you know, I'm very thirsty. I've been walking around your campus all day, and there's really like nothing to drink here. So I was feeling sort of like out of it and sort of dehydrated. And this woman, she saw me in that situation, and instead of seeing me as a trespasser, she sort of saw me as a stumbler, you know, somebody who was lost. And she offered me a cup of water, and made sure that I was hydrated. And then she asked me, you know, who I was. And then she asked me where I was from. And she asked me like my whole story of why I was there. And, you know, that was significantly different than all of the other people. I mean, there's probably, I would say, 50 people in this room who was sort of thrown back and disgusted by my presence in that room. Because, I mean, it was all women, so a man shouldn't have been there. But I would say about 50 women were like disgusted and thrown back. And then all of a sudden this other woman sort of enters the picture, and she has charity on her heart. So she offers me a cup to go. And I'll never really forget that, because again, it was like, it was one of those moments where just a very magical person was able to see my soul, you know? And so that's the two moments that I really wanted to share with you guys today. And I wanted to ask you guys, like, when in life can you give somebody else a water cup? Something that is so free and so infinite, but it requires you to see. It requires you to actually, you know, see people for who they are. And it requires a lot of spiritual work because, like I said, I would say, you know, 50 people didn't have that capacity, and one person entered the room with that capacity. So it requires a lot of work to get to that space where you're giving a trespasser a cup of water. But that is really the ultimate form of the charity that Jesus calls us to not see the trespasser, but to see the stumbler instead, and to help them be on their way, to help them in the midst of their journey, because they trespassed, you know, probably, in that situation, I wasn't trying to trespass. It's not like I was trying to break in, and I explained that. So when somebody stops and you're the midst of their journey, how are you actually treating that person? Are you treating them like a criminal? Or are you treating them like a trespasser? Or are you treating them like somebody who's on a journey and, you're their halfway point in a sort of way? You're treating them as a stumbler. You're treating them as a soul who is currently lost. And that's really the ultimate act of charity, is to get to that point, to where you no longer see it. You no longer see trespassers. You no longer see homeless. You no longer see prisoners. You no longer see the lowly, because Jesus says, the things that you do for the least of those amongst you, you have also done for me. So to get to the point where you see the face of God in all of these people, that is the capacity of which we all possess, but we all have to work deeply to get to. And so even if you don't make much money, compliments are free. You can make somebody's day by complimenting their t-shirt, their shoes, their hair. When somebody is phenomenal at their job, just letting them know that you really appreciate their customer service or their hard work, and that your experience with them has been significantly better than experiences you've had with other people, and that you deeply appreciate seeing them at this job because they're good at it. When somebody, is intelligent, letting them know that they've had an intelligent idea. All of these things you have the capacity to do. The poorest man on earth has the capacity to do. When you see a homeless person, just saying a silent prayer for them in your heart, that it doesn't even require, you don't have to worry about anxieties, or you don't have to worry about how they would react if you just said, if you just made the sign of the cross in the name of the Father, of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, and prayed for them. You wouldn't have to worry about any sort of interactions with them. It would cost you $0. You don't have to worry about them buying drugs, because people always say, oh well, if you give a homeless man money, then they'll just buy drugs. Well, what if you gave a homeless man prayer? What can you give the homeless man? But not just the homeless man, every single man around you and every single woman around you. What can you give them today? And that is truly tithing, you know what I mean? That is truly charity. It's just correcting your heart posture to see people with the intercessions of their guardian angels and with God, to see the soul of people, and not to see just the flesh, not just to see an obstacle, not just to see, another face in your day, another car on your journey, but to truly see souls. That is the Shack charity. And even going above compliments, you see these videos of Shaquille O'Neal going into stores, and what's stopping you from invoking that spirit onto your own city? Maybe you could write a nice note and put it into a box of diapers, so a struggling mother and a struggling father could receive something nice and just have a little glimpse of light through everything that they're struggling with. Say thank you for choosing life. Say thank you for fighting for the future of this world, for fighting for the life of their infant, for struggling, to buy diapers, but to go going to these, stores and buying penny pinching to buy diapers, to buy formula and everything. What is stopping you from saying thank you to those people? And maybe you could buy like a $25 Fandango gift card, or so they could watch a movie and they could just have a nice night together, or paying for them to go out to eat. Most people have the capacity for that level of charity. But even if you don't, you still have the capacity for that heart posture. You know what I mean? And the thing with this world, like today, though, is, especially leftists and especially atheists, they'll make like $350,000 a year, and they say, well, actually, I can't be charitable. I don't have enough money to be charitable. I only make $15,000 a month, and I need a Rolls Royce, and I need a Rolex. Oh, I don't have the capacity to be charitable. And that spirit really, it's a demonic spirit in nature, and it flounders the vast majority of American cities today. So the way to fight back against that is radical charity, to do things like Shaquille O'Neal, like going into a store to shop on your own, but in the midst of that, seeing other people. And seeing other people even in the products they would buy. Like I said, diapers is a really good example of that. And maybe putting a gift card in a diaper box. What's stopping you from writing little notes and giving it to people, telling them that you appreciate them just for being who they are, because they make you happier as a person to be around. They're good friends to you. They make you feel accepted in this society. How valuable that is for you to feel accepted, because if they didn't exist, and if the other people, the few other people who make you feel accepted in this world didn't exist, how much less your life would be if you were not accepted by anybody, and so that person is providing great value into your life. And how difficult would it be for you to then tell them that, to tell people the value that they provide in your life, to write them notes and tell them thank you, to give them small little gifts. You give them a chocolate bar, give them, maybe some, like a rose, a chocolate bar. These are things that cost less than $5, but can make somebody's whole entire month in remembrance that you gave them that thing. Right now, at this point in your life, you can't move Mount Everest. You can't move the national playing field of America. You can't make a Ground-Tusk, difference that's going to be featured on CNN tomorrow night. You don't have the outreach and the financial capabilities of doing that. I don't either, trust me. I'm saying this, I don't have that ability. I'm not Penguins Zero, who's on my screen right now. I'm not Shaquille O'Neal. I'm not PewDiePie. I'm not any of these people. I'm not Good Mythical Morning. I'm not, Vegas Matt. I'm not, I could go down the list and the list and the list of people that I'm not and the things that I don't have. But in your small town, and if you live in a big city, in your apartment building, in your block, you have the capabilities of invoking a charitable spirit into that area. You have the capabilities of seeing the souls of your area. You have the capabilities to be radical, so people see you in the same sense that they see Shaquille O'Neal, as a radical giver, as somebody who might be seen as a fool or as stupid. Like if you put a gift card inside of a diaper box, the person might think that you're like an insane person for doing that. But that's how people see Shaquille O'Neal. It's like, oh, you just go into Best Buy and you just give away 10 grand. That's an insane thing to do. But it's that insanity that inspires other people to act similarly to that, you know? So that is what the insanity is what invokes the spirits of charity in your neighborhood. So I just wanted to implore you guys today to really look at your heart posture and how you can see people as the stumbler and not as the trespasser, and how you can see people as the face of Christ and not as the homeless or as the prisoner, because that is what he says to do. He says, whatever you have done for the least amongst you, you have also done for me. And how do you see people like that? How do you have radical charity in the place that you live with your money? I want you guys to really meditate on that. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.
May the entire city be proud.
There's no escaping death. You've seen my work. It speaks for itself.